Welcome back. So this piece, we will talk a little bit about finding space on campus and space reservation process, as well as the activity request form. Now, these items will be more detailed for the president orientation because these are generally things that are done by either a president or an event manager. But please make sure you talk to your e-board to make sure everybody knows what steps they are in charge of. The main thing that we want to point out is that there's a lot of different spaces on campus that can be utilized for events. So it's important to try to determine what makes the most sense for your event. So determining what type of space you need for an event. So for example, if you're hoping to host a movie, you might think, oh, well, the Damon Cinema is the best option, and that might be the case. But if the cinema is not available, what are some other alternative spaces that you can utilize that can serve just as well? You also want to think about how much time you need for setup and teardown. So if you're hoping to host an event that includes a lot of moving pieces, you might want to give yourself some additional time to set up and tear down to make sure that you are leaving the space better than you found it. But then also want to make sure that you're not requesting the space for too long in case there are other organizations or other things happening on campus that might require that space. And then once again, determining who should do these steps. You can find additional information on how to utilize 25 Live on the Loyola 25 Live, the campus reservation site, as well as on 25 Live. And again, you should have access to your 25 login information from President. But if you do have any questions about campus reservations, you can always reach out to campus reservations. The main thing that we want to point out is that if you are in communication with campus reservations, that you want to make sure that you are communicating actively and making sure you're responding to their emails more often than not. Some of those emails can get lost, so just make sure you're keeping an eye out on that. As I mentioned, sometimes you want to determine what type of spaces you really need for an event. So I know we all love those big ticket spaces in Damon because they bring in a lot of people, but oftentimes not all events require the use of these large scale spaces. So you want to make sure that you are keeping your options open, whether it is utilizing a classroom in Cuneo, Mundelein. If you do need to utilize MPR again, or some of those bigger spaces, you want to start planning far in advance. And then also recognizing that we do have other event spaces at Water Towers campus that organizations can make use of. So if you have an event happening and there's no space at Lakeshore, or vice versa, if you want to have an event at Water Tower, you can always take a look at those spaces as well. We want to make sure that you as an organization are utilizing all of the resources that are accessible to you. So you can always plan to utilize alternative spaces that you might not think are always utilized, but are always an option and opportunity for organizations. And then the following step is the activity request form. Most of these kind of can happen simultaneously. So once you have access to funding, you can submit both of these simultaneously. You can also submit a space reservation a little bit earlier, but just make sure that if you, for example, request a space and then you don't receive funding and you're not planning to have an event, that you reach out to campus reservations and cancel that request so that other partners can utilize that space. And then once again, making sure that you are assigning a person to do this step. If you have any questions about your activity request form, you can reach out to the Campus Activities Network or CAN at luc.edu, or if you are a sorority and fraternity live organization, you can reach out to SFL at luc.edu. Once again, the event process can be done through LU Community. Information on how to do that is included in the pre-orientation materials for the president. So again, this might not be a role that is assigned to you, but it's just helpful to know. There are two main timelines that you need to follow with an ARF. It needs to be submitted either 14 days before your event for most activities, and then 4 weeks before your event if your event or activity has a contract, whether that's a performer, speaker. This includes unpaid and unpaid speakers, as well as any high-risk activity. So an event with alcohol or minors or a blood drive. Missing the deadline may cause your event to be postponed or canceled. Now, the reason why it's important for a treasurer to be aware of when the ARF is due is that you also need to make sure that when you are requesting funding, you are requesting that well in advance of when the ARF is due. So if you go back to the budget deadlines and resources tab, you'll notice that organizations receive funding usually a week and a half after the deadline for the budget is. So the allocations committee receives the budget request, and then they take a week or so to review them and to provide that funding. So you want to make sure that your event is happening 2 to 4 weeks after that decision letter or decision is made by the allocations committee, so that you have enough time to submit your ARFs, or your president or whoever has enough time to submit the ARF and those additional documents. So a lot of events oftentimes get denied funding because they are happening too soon after the deadline for the budget request. And we know that organizations don't have enough time to complete all of the steps that they need to complete. So please make sure you're checking out those deadlines so that your event does not get denied. And these deadlines are pretty set in stone, so please make sure you're following those to the best of your ability. The deadlines are there because it allows us enough time to process, to make sure your event is happening successfully. So please make sure that you're utilizing those deadlines appropriately.